r/NoSleep. Posted by you/kazthemurphyfan. 10 years ago, I found an old videotape in my attic. The content in it disturbed me forever. So, this all happened when I was 16, so nearly 10 years ago at this point. Funny how fast time goes by, because I don't think I've been the same person since. You see, my entire childhood, my entire family considered me outgoing, charismatic and rambunctious. They stopped using that last word quite a bit once I entered through the gates of my teen years. Now, in present time, in my own words, I'm broken. My whole life that was once ahead of me. Vanquished. Left in the dust, all because of one night. One night. It's ironic how much I loved the concept of the internet in my early teen years, the fact that you could talk to random people that you didn't even need to see in person about whatever you loved, it was fucking incredible, and now, I just look at it as a wasteful, disgusting piece of shit, not able to look at it the same after the same night I will be getting into in a moment for a reason I still don't know and was just random, and now I have a rented, busted up laptop, just to write out the experience that single-handedly ruined my entire view of life, and ruined my mind, turned it into a fucking manifestation of death, grief, pain, violence, anger, psychopathic. I'm rambling on. I've always had that issue. Nothing can really fix it. I'm assuming anyone bothering to read this is probably going to click off because right now, I just seem like a crazy old guy that got a hold of a computer and is typing some bullshit into a little box that says text, optional, even though really, I'm only in my late 20s. Already seems like bullshit, huh? I promise you, I'm not making this up, it's not a fucking joke, no one has believed me before, and whenever I told them, they tried taking me to a therapist, all strangers, albeit. Haven't told anyone in forever, which I may need one because the attic of my childhood home is a place that I never want to remember ever again. I need to jog through my memory a bit here because everything seems so foggy, still a blur, as if it happened only 5 minutes ago, but there's not much to really need a lot of brain power to remember. I'm an only child, and I lived in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, full of delightfulness, energy, and a lot of land. I didn't know any of my neighbors closely, but they seemed nice enough. That's not important to the story though. Going back to my childhood as I sit on this air mattress in the shitty rundown hotel, to be honest, really great. I had a lot of stuff, whether it was toys, technology, stuff like that. Lots and lots of friends, too. Even a girlfriend. At that time, life quite literally couldn't have been any better than it already was. It was a Saturday night. The weekend, so I got to stay up late, you all know how that is. I was in my room, playing on my Xbox 360 while my parents were asleep, drinking energy drinks since I was planning on pulling an all-nighter. I was succeeding, since, if I can remember correctly, it was about 12 a.m. already. It was the first Halo, since I wanted to go back to it, and I died for the first time in the hour I started playing it, getting frustrated, but also proud of the progress I had made so far, when I thought of the attic that was right down the hall of my house. I knew I had never gone up there, because my parents always said it was just full of boxes and didn't want me going up there. The whole thing they said about it just being boxes kept floating in my head, repeating itself as if my mind just started disobeying me, even when I thought in my head for those exact words to stop. I decided I would just take a tiny peek, just to see what it looked like. I kept my Xbox running for background noise so my parents wouldn't hear the creaking of the attic stairs in the attic itself. I snuck out of my room, checked to see if my parents were asleep, and to my luck, they were. Passed out and not looking like they would wake up anytime soon. Perfect, I thought, doing a little celebration, before I cut it out when I realized how dumb I looked. I closed their door a tad and tiptoed to where the attic door was. It was just in the middle of the bedroom hallway, not hard to find at all. I realized how loud it would be for me to open the attic door and have the ladder come swinging down. I winced at the thought, and told myself I wouldn't be loud at all. I was lying to myself. I reached up to it and pulled the attic door down, and the ladder came down. I tried to catch it, 50% successful since I prevented the thud on the floor being really loud, but it still made a lot of noise. I cussed myself out and started climbing up the ladder, into the abyss that was the attic of my house. Every step I took up was a cautious one, making sure the ladder wouldn't creak loudly, in fear of waking up my parents and making them mad, even though I had my game volume up from my room to try and drown out the noise if it ever did creak. A minute passes after me being careful to not fall off the ladder or creak the ladder before I finally get my head into the attic. I look. There was no boxes. No boxes in sight. In fact, literally nothing was in sight. I start thinking, why did my parents lie about there being boxes up here when the attic was empty? As I'm trying to figure out the logic behind that, something in the corner of my eye catches my attention. I look and see a small, old TV, set up in the corner of the attic, with a tiny chair and a videotape, just sitting idly in front of it. I was in awe that there was actually something up here, and that it was so random. I started climbing to get myself fully in the attic. Once I do, I start blowing cobwebs and dust out my face. It's clear there hasn't been anyone up here in ages. Even the old TV, chair and videotape was dusty. The attic was pretty large, so the distance from the TV and the attic door was pretty significant. Once I made it to the little TV setup, I looked back one last time at the attic door. My parents weren't up. Perfect. I picked up the videotape, and proceeded to blow and wipe the dust off of it. I read the title. Jonathan and Cassie. Those were my parents' names. I quietly sighed, realizing it was probably just a wedding video. I was still curious and bored though, so I figured out how to open up the VCR, and once I did, I celebrated a bit since I figured out how to work an old thing such as this TV, and slowly inserted the videotape. The VCR started closing and pulling the videotape back like a monster eating its victim, not allowing the victim to see the light before it vanishes. Cool, I thought. The TV quickly turned on to a loud static. I winced and gritted my teeth and quickly found the volume button, and turned it all the way down. I looked back at the attic door to see if I saw my parents moving from downstairs, but they still weren't up. I breathed a sigh of relief, letting my heart rate drop since my heart started beating quicker than the speed of light when the static started blasting through the speakers. The TV kept on a static for a while, and I started losing hope that anything was even going to play, before finally, the video started, the TV coming to life. Reminder that you remember the year the first photo was and pay attention to when the next photos were taken. On the screen, it was a photo of my mom and dad from 1995, seemingly after they got married. They were on a couch, from the same living room of my house. Nice. I whisper. This was pretty cool, seeing old photos of my parents. They looked happy. They were smiling, extremely happy, in fact, young, wild and free. After 30 seconds, the video had a sudden static, then cut to another photo. They were on the same couch, and the date at the bottom said it was a few months later. They were still smiling, still looked happy, but they looked a bit more tired. The contrast from the first photo and the second photo was slightly darker. Still, nothing seemed off. I let myself relax as I tried to sit myself on the tiny chair that was also provided in the attic. I barely fit in it. Yet again, after 30 seconds, there was another sudden static and the photo changed. 6 months later, after I was born. My parents were on the same couch, my mom holding me as a baby in her arms, but their smiles were slightly withered. They looked more unhappy, more depressed, but it still wasn't too noticeable. The contrast was yet again slightly darker, and I saw that bags were forming under their eyes. This time, a static happened after 10 seconds and the photo on the screen changed. 1 month later. I wasn't in my mom's arms in this photo, not even in my dad's. Like all the other photos, they were on the same couch, but this photo was strikingly different, and it was disturbing. My dad was marginally slumped on the couch, and I could tell that he was trying to smile, but it just wasn't there. The bags under his eyes were extremely dark now. My mom in this photo was crying. She had tears all over her face, and on the clothes she was wearing. The bags under her eyes, just like my dad's, were extremely dark now. Her mouth was open like she was literally bawling. The photo was frightfully dark now. The photo switched after 5 seconds, no static this time, and my parents in this photo were even worse. This photo was only 3 days later. My dad was in the same position as the last photo, but something was leaking from his head, but I couldn't tell what it was because the photo was fucking dark as shit, and his eyes were closed. My mom, to a degree, was also slumped again the couch, holding onto her stomach, crying again, her eyes open, staring directly at the camera. I shivered. What the fuck were these photos? I awaited the next photo to suddenly come up, bracing myself for another disturbing picture to see. I could have turned it off, but you know what they say, curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity killed my childhood, in this case. It took a minute and a half for the static to happen and the next photo to come up. And dear God, I wish I had turned it off. In this last photo, the date 1 day later, The photo not dark as the other photos, at a brightness where I could see everything. I saw my parents, on the same couch as they've been on in every photo, the couch in my living room. They were dead. My dad had his throat cut open, his face ripped clean from his head, fully slumped on the couch, lifeless, blood all over himself. My mom had every limb cut from her body, every body part of her scattered across the couch, and when I saw her head, her face was also ripped clean off her head. The couch was utterly soaked in blood. Seeing the organs behind their face made me gag. I started panicking, I started whimpering, and all I could think was, what the fuck? How could my parents be dead? They've been taking care of me my whole life. This had to have been made on Halloween for some type of prank. What are you doing up here? I hear my mom's voice from behind me. I jump and look behind me and see my mom and dad behind me, an angry look on their face. I don't even think, and impulsively, I shout, I'm sorry, I was just curious. We told you to not. My dad started to growl. I started hearing his tongue click as I saw his face twitch. The fuck? He finished his sentence as he did this. We told you not to go up here. I start backing up against the wall, confused as to what was happening. My mom took a closer look to me, and gave me a reassuring smile, the smile I was so familiar with. She put a hand on my shoulder. I suddenly felt more comforted. I thought I was going to be fine. It's okay. She smiles, a normal smile. I let my breath go, and try to smile back, before abruptly, her voice gets gurgly and achy, like she was trying to throw up, her arms getting immensely stiff, and she says, we aren't mad at you, son. Before I could ask what happened to her voice, she puts her hand up to her face. I watch my dad stop his twitching and do the same thing. I then watch as my parents start to rip their face off of their head, as if they were ripping a sheet of paper. I saw what was behind their face. These things. They weren't my parents. All I saw before I screamed was an alien-like, pale, and a disoriented face as they pulled my parents' faces off of their head. They started to screech loudly that nearly made me go deaf as I broke away from them and started screaming as I literally jumped from the attic, right back downstairs. I started running to the living room as I could hear the sound of crawling and growling from behind me. It sounded like it was on the walls, and it was fucking fast, and I knew I wasn't going to get away safely. I make it to the living room and trip on my face on hard wooden floor. I grunt, and I quickly lift my face up, and I see my parents. My real parents from the sixth and last photo from that videotape. All of my mom's limbs scattered across the couch, my dad's throat cut, their faces missing. I gasp and looked behind me and saw those creatures, still in my parents' clothes, staring down at me. Their faces were so fucking terrifying now that they got my parents' faces off. I think I literally shit myself again. It's been real fun. Playing dress up as your parents. The thing pretending to be my dad gargled out, almost struggling to let those words out. They both then started twitching violently, making horrible throwing up like sounds, before eventually shape-shifting out of my parents' body into their normal bodies. They were abnormally tall, their bones disoriented, large claws, and super skinny. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move. Now you're next. The same one hisses. I see their sly smiles form across their hideous faces, as I covered my face with my arms, closed my eyes and screamed, preparing for the same thing to happen to me, just like they did with my parents. I screamed for what seemed like forever, until I hear knocking on the front door. It was one of my neighbors. They've come to save me. I could hear them yelling something along the lines of what's going on in there? But I wasn't too sure because it was getting drowned out by my screams. I opened my eyes slightly and saw that the creatures were no longer there. The bodies of my parents were no longer on the couch and my neighbor that was at the door was banging harder on the door. I stopped screaming and put my arms down, tears rolling down my face, the confusion and fear still running through my mind. What I did next is one I still regret because I easily could have handled it differently. Instead of answering the door and trying to tell my neighbor somehow about what happened, or calling the cops, I opened the sliding back door of my house and started running away from my house, ducking behind stuff to avoid being seen. My logic at the time was that people would think that I was crazy about the whole TV thing. The bodies of my parents were no longer on the couch. I didn't even know where those creatures went, where my parents were. I just didn't want to have to deal with people not believing me. I never even saw my friends or my girlfriend ever again. I was eventually adopted by a really nice family a month later after being put in a foster care system. I don't remember exactly how I was put in an orphanage. Maybe the owners saw me walking across the street, tired, and they knew I didn't have a family? I'll message those interested in knowing the answer if I remember. If I don't break this laptop after posting. I didn't stay with them that long though, because I kept remembering about the incident that happened at my house just a year earlier, and I couldn't stand being with another family, so I just packed up my stuff, left and rented an apartment with the bare minimum of money I had and got a job. I still have that same job, even though it drains me physically and mentally every single day, but what's the point of trying to have a happy life now? I've been non-stop drinking for the past 10 years, smuggling bottles of liquor, even when I lived with my foster family and before I turned 21. I'm sure when I moved out, they found old whiskey bottles underneath my bed, because I never bothered to throw that shit away. The rest of my family heard about what happened, about how I ran away, but not about my parents. I don't think anyone has found out, really, they just know that I vanished, and my parents vanished without a trace, but I know the reality of what happened. Or do I? Do I really know? Was it just a hallucination? Was I just crazy? I've gone through years of getting kicked out of apartments for being too loud when I scream at the top of my lungs after pouring a bottle of beer, attempting to get those memories out of my head, being too messy, and walking downstairs to the lobby drunk. Every god damn apartment complex. Which is why now, I'm at the shittiest of them all, the worst fucking apartment complex I've ever been in, walls being ripped apart, a horrible stench that smells like death and bugs everywhere in the hallways. But hey, they don't give a shit about what I do, so why should I give a shit? Looking back at this now, I think I understand the reality of this world, the reality of those things that took my parents' lives when I was just a baby, terrorizing them for a year, before eventually just ending them. The horror sinks in every single time I remember that I was raised by those creatures, for 16 fucking years, and I still don't understand what their motivation was, what they were waiting for, why would they wait 16 years to try and pounce on me, show me what they really are. I don't want to sound crazy, but, what else do you want me to say? They're what lurks in the night. They creep. They crawl. They kill. They break. They ruin. If any of you for some reason want to leave a comment on this, go right ahead, I don't care. I'll try to reply to as many as I can before I go out and smash this godforsaken laptop to a million pieces, burn it, then proceed to burn its ashes, and then throw those ashes into a wood chipper. I'm sorry if this isn't the happy ending you all wanted. I'm sorry I didn't become some hero, avenging my parents, going out to try and find these fucking creatures that ruined my goddamn life, and trust me, I want to rip their head off and keep it as a souvenir, hang it up on my wall, laugh at their dead corpse for taking my parents away from me, for pretending to be them. I don't even know what my parents' actual personalities were like, or maybe they nailed it, because from what I have seen in my childhood, the rest of my family were very normal around them. Which makes me think, how long were these creatures studying and watching my parents? Why did they choose them? Hell, what were the point of the pictures? I'm trying to drink this all off, but I still have a tremendous weight on my shoulders, an omen over my head that I can't seem to get away, no matter how many shots of vodka I take, no matter how drunk I get. Now that I think about it, maybe I can do something about this. For the past couple of months, I've been hearing quiet crawls on my apartment walls and quiet gurgling from other rooms in my apartment. In the middle of the night, I see tall, skinny shadows from my closet or my hallway. Maybe, just maybe, those creatures found out where I lived, and they've come to finish the job on me. Maybe it's for the best, though I really don't want to see their hideous, disgusting faces ever again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and get on my air mattress, turn on a Christmas flick with a bottle of tequila in my hands, and continue hearing those crawling and gurgling sounds outside of my room, and let the creatures know I'm aware of their presence, and let the inevitable happen to me. Thank you. Thank you for allowing yourself to read the events of my traumatizing past. Be thankful that this will never happen to you. I'll try to read the comments if I'm still alive. Posted at 10:48 a.m., December 5, 2021. Remember me.